All right, before we move to the slider, I want to add something. Now, the thing is that previously we typed manually JSON server watchdb. We needed to manually type this. So maybe tomorrow, if you want to do something with this project, you're gonna have to open a new terminal and, of course, go again and type of this manually. We can skip this. We can add a rule right here. We can add a command and run this just like we are doing npm start. I'm gonna go right here at the bottom, and I'm gonna just write a new command. It's gonna be, I don't know, you could use whatever name you wish. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna call mine dev and then serve, and this one is gonna be equal to the same thing we are just typing for the JSON server. It's gonna be JSON server and then space minus watch, then db the JSON, and then minus port 3004. Yeah, same thing. And then comma. Gonna close it, gonna save it, and remember that I'm just killed the terminal right here for the project. So I'm gonna do clear. I'm gonna do npm start again, and I'm gonna go right here at the bottom. I'm gonna kill it as well. I'm gonna do clear. I'm going to do npm run and then dev and then serve, just like that. Remember, dev serve. Very good. So this one is going to start JSON server. It's going to trigger that command, and it's going to run JSON server. And right here, yes. So everything should be working. And okay, I believe it's going to work. Yeah, it's working. So if I reload the page, we get home. That's good. It's working. So the next thing is going to be creating the actual slider, and the slider is going to be a reusable component. So I'm going to go to home, and right here, instead of creating the slider right here, I need to start creating the logic for creating a reusable component. So first, this since it's going to be reusable, it needs to be someplace else than home, because of course it's reusable, and home is a section, just a view. So I'm going to put the slider inside components, and I'm going to create a new folder that is going to be called widgets. And inside widgets, we can have all the reusable components. So for this one, I'm going to create a new folder that is going to be called news and then slider. Makes sense. This slider is going to be only for the news, just for now. So I'm going to create a new file that is going to be called slider.js. And this slider.js is going to be a class-based component. So I'm going to say import, then React, and then component, just like that. And then from, and then of course React. Good. So I need to create the actual class. So it's going to be class news slider, then extends, and then component. What else? Since it's a class, we need to return something. We need to render something. So it's going to be render, open and close, and then of course we're going to do the return with parentheses. So we're going to be returning just a div that it's going to say, I don't know, slider. Makes sense. Div and okay, and then slider. Let me make this a little bit better. There you go. So then we need to export. So I'm going to say export and then default, export default, and then news slider, just like that. Okay. So now, since I have this this component, I can go back to home and import this and make a reference right here inside the return. Okay. So let's go back to home, and I'm going to say import, then news slider, and then from is going to be dot forward slash, then widgets forward slash news slider forward slash, and then slider. So now if I make a reference to this, just like that, we should be getting slider. So yeah, we get it. We get slider. That's good. So now, of course, this is going to be changing a little bit. It's going to be we are going to be passing props for this, but for now, we can skip this. So I'm going to go back to slider. Now, slider needs to render a slider from some place. So we're going to make a template for the slider, and this slider is going to be receiving some data, and the data is going to be the photo and the text and everything else. And if you remember, we have it on the db.json. So how can we make a request and pass it to the slider? Make a request to the database and then pass it to the slider. So, okay. So first, we're going to be using a state. So I'm going to say state and then nothing inside. So the only thing that we're going to get inside is going to be the news, the actual news. So I'm going to say news, and then I'm going to create an empty array. So whenever the application starts, we can have a state with an empty news or articles. You could call this articles, doesn't matter. Then after everything is ready, after everything is mounted, we want to make a request to localhost and then articles, and we want to bring all the articles. So what we can do, we can use a lifecycle method that is going to be run before the render and just try to get the information. Okay. So first we're going to use Axios. Oh, sorry, we don't have Axios installed. We could use Fetch, but I don't really like Fetch. I kind of hate Fetch. I use Axios the whole time. So we're going to install. It's going to be Axios. It's a library to make requests, just like Ajax, jQuery Ajax. Same idea. Axios is the same idea. So I'm going to kill this, going to do clear, and we're going to do npm install, then Axios -- save. Oh, cancel. Gonna press enter. It's a really small library. It's just to do this, to make async requests. Should be installing, should be done in a few seconds. And well, it's gonna taking a long time anyways. Okay, so I'm gonna do clear and I'm gonna do npm start again. Okay, so yeah, we want to. Okay, so I'm going to go back, and since we're going to be using this Axios, I need to import it. I'm going to say import, and then Axios from Axios. There we go. So now to make a request with Axios, what we need to do, we need to make a reference to that Axios we are requesting at the top. Then we do dot, and we do get. And inside get, pretty much we pass the URL of whatever we want to get. In this case, what we want to do, we want to bring some information to make a request from localhost and then articles. So I'm going to copy all of this, copy this URL, and I'm going to use template strings. You're going to see why in a minute. So we're going to bring articles, all right? So this is going to go to the JSON server to this location, make a request for all the articles, and Axios will return all the articles. Okay, so how can we catch this articles? So we do, whenever we make a request with Axios, it will return a promise. So we're going to say then, and we're going to catch that data within the promise. It's going to be a response. And inside the response, we can have the actual data. So we're going to run just a function. Okay. So we're going to say this. Oh, sorry. Whenever we make the request, we catch the promise, and inside response is we're gonna have the data that we want to. So I'm gonna console log just to make sure that we are getting the correct information. I'm gonna say response. I'm gonna go right here, and if I reload the application, we already have it here. It's gonna say data, and we're gonna have a bunch of information: config, data, headers, requests. You know, we have a lot of information that we don't really need. The information that we want is gonna be inside data. Notice that we have 18 results, which is going to be all the articles. So instead of getting response, what we can do, we can say response.data. And instead, we get the array of objects, you know, with all the collection. So we have all the articles right here. We can grab the first 3 and pass it to the slider. And the slider is going to know that needs to render something that has a title of this, and needs to render to get the image 1.jpg. Okay, that's good. So now what we need to do, since we have a state of news, I'm going to say this dot state, this dot set state, open and close, and we're going to set this new state of news. So, okay, I'm going to go news, and I'm going to say response dot data. Okay. So I'm going to go right here at the bottom. I'm going to do console log, and I'm going to be outputting that state, that news, just to check that we are getting the correct state. And something funny is going to happen. This dot state dot news. Okay. So now on the console log, first we get an empty array, and then we get the data. So what is happening right here? So whenever the application, this view runs, the application runs, is gonna go to the render, and it's gonna output whatever we have inside that state, that news. Whenever you make an async request, this takes some time. So whenever the application loads, it recognizes the state and it's triggering this. But this one, it's not ready. It takes some time. So it's going to be waiting for this, but then it's going to go to the render. It's not going to wait for this one to be completed, for the request to get completed. It's going to go directly to the render. So it's going to console log that state, that news. And at this point, since this Axios, it's not ready yet, it's going to display an empty state, just like we have right here. Then, just a few milliseconds later, this Axios, this call, is going to get completed, and this one is going to be changing the state. And if you remember, whenever something updates the state, React is going to re-render the component. So it's going to go update state, and then React is going to re-render. So we are getting the new state of news, which is we're going to get the whole data. One more thing. Right now on the slider, let me go back to this. Inside the slider, we are getting just 3 news, just 3 articles. And right now we are fetching pretty much for the whole database of articles. So right now we have just on this db.json, we have 18 results. So, this is good, but in the real life, you can have a larger database. There's no point in trying to load all the articles. We just could request for 3. So with JSON Server, we can do that. We can pass right here some arguments, some params, and it's going to recognize it and give you just 3. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to say underscore, I'm going to say start. And this start is going to be from where it's going to start. It's going to start from the ID number 0, or it's going to start from the ID number 4, or whatever. So we're going to say, for now, we're going to say 0. It's going to start at the very beginning. Okay, so notice that we're still getting the information. Now, what else? We want to get the first 3. So it starts at 0, and then we have a different param that is going to be end. So we're going to say end equals and starts and ends at 3. So in theory, we should be getting the article number 1, number 2, and number 3. So okay, so if we go right here, we get 0, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3. We are just getting 3 different articles. So this works. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Right now we have a slider, but we don't have an actual slider. We're just rendering some text. So we need to create a slider. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to save it. And right here, I'm going to make a reference to slider and then templates. We're going to see in a minute why. And just going to create a self-closing tag. Now this is slider templates. We're going to get from this component the actual slider. So I'm going to go to new slider and create a new file that is going to be called slider underscore and then templates. Something like that makes sense. And then .js. So this slider .templates is going to receive the information that you have inside its state, that news, which is going to be all the 3 articles, and then it's going to be rendering the slider. Okay. So this one could be a stateless component. So we're going to say import, let me make it right, import React from React. And I'm going to go right here and create const. And then it's going to be called, I don't know, slider templates. is going to be equal to just a function. And this function at the very first is going to be receiving some props, which is going to be the actual news data. So, okay. So for now, we're just going to return something dumb just to make sure that it's working. Div and then slider. Then I'm going to go right here at the bottom and say export, then default, and then slider templates. Good. So I'm going to go back to slider. We have the reference right here, but we are not importing the actual component right at the top. So we need to, call it. I'm going to say import and then slider templates from, and then of course we go to // and slider templates because it's inside the same directory. Okay, so in theory we should be getting slider. So we get slider. That works. So now we need to pass the props that we are getting from the state.news, the actual state. So we're going to be passing this as props. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to say data is going to be equal to state.news. That's going to be the first step, passing the database that we want to render. So I'm going to go right here, and for now I'm going to say console log and then props. Okay, so we are getting data and array. Remember that we are passing data right here, and this one is receiving props and then props.data. Okay, so we are getting the information. Right, so the next thing will be to calling the slider and rendering the information, just creating the markup for the slider. So let's go to the next one and do that.